One of the biggest was a giant 8-pointer. I was hunting that deer all year. I had one encounter with him. Another buck that we were chasing we called Stickers. It was a mainframe 10 with sticker points off him. We had another giant 8-pointer the year of the 8-pointer. That was not him. And then of course we had the big buck that we got on camera last year. It's probably about a 2 square mile section that we've gotten quite a few giants over the years. That's a really good sign. Even if it's just doe bedding, that'll mean that the bucks will be here for the does, and I have the natural terrains compounding together right there in that little trifecta going on. It looks like historically it's been hit, and then it was hit last year. There's some pretty good gouging up here about chest, shoulder height for tines. This is more about waist high, but I can see nicks all over the branches. So this looks like a good rub. It's July 12th. We're out in the big woods again today. We are narrowing down where that big buck was and trying to find where he's centralized instead of his excursion route. Where I'm drifting to today, it's an area that I have a lot of history in. It's probably about a 2 square mile section that we've gotten quite a few giants over the years. One of the biggest was a giant 8-pointer. I was hunting that deer all year. I had one encounter with him and that was it, and then he ended up getting killed later. I never got a trail cam picture of that deer, but my buddy Tom did, and he was nice enough to let me put it on this video so you guys can see it. Another buck that we were chasing we called Stickers. It was a mainframe 10 with sticker points off him. And then we had another giant 8-pointer the year of the 8-pointer. That was not him. And then of course we had the big buck that we got on camera last year. So I'm confident to get into this area just because I know the genetics are here. And I never was able to really narrow down where those deer stayed. It was more just rut time. They were moving in on does for like 2 to 3 days, and then they were gone. So where I'm going in today, there's a big ridge in this back system, and I was on the other side of the ridge where that buck was on camera, and we're going to the direction he was heading. I've never been on this end of it, but it should be very similar. But where this ridge is in the back, it'll drop down and come to where I'm going. But then if you continue out, it connects into the area where that big 8 was. So I do have a really good feeling that he was in this section too, and he was just jumping back and forth and doing rounds. So I'm hoping this mature buck that we're after now follows the same kind of pattern, except now I see things a little different than I did back then, and I'm hoping I can get closer to him in rut, or at least catch him on one of these funnels or pinches or something. Found a pretty good rub here. The height isn't very telling, but those gouges are pretty deep. Right now, I'm on this little bitty terrain feature here, and it drops down and it kind of steps down on this little, it's like a side ridge knob kind of thing. And this will continue out that direction and eventually line up where there's a very narrow finger pretty much that connects this little system to a larger ridge in the back, which is what my focus is. And inside that, on the maps, it looks like there's a saddle within that little finger. So we'll have a compounding feature right there. And I'm hoping to find the sign or a scrape or something right there. And that'll be a good camera spot and a kill spot. But I'm already finding some rubs leading back to it, which is a positive sign. And then once we get to that, I'll give you a better view on what that looks like. And then that'll lead back into closer to the ridge, where the ridge dumps down. It'll dump down like that, and then there's terrain that'll force them to go around it. And then that direction from it is where I got that buck picture heading to this area. So I know he was coming back to this ridge system. Where he went from there, I don't know. But if we get into one of these pinches or funnels within that area, we should have a good chance of seeing him or another buck of his caliber. Right here is the edge of this top, and it just drops down. And then this spans a decent width across. And it just keeps getting broader and broader as you go. But this is all choking down into this little finger. And right over on that side is the other edge. If I set up in the middle here, I probably only have 40 yards to each side, maybe 50. But as you keep going, this chokes even more and more. And this edge over here really starts to choke in. And the pinch point is up there that I'm looking for. As I'm getting deeper into this, I'm already seeing a ton more tracks and trails and a lot of droppings. So they're definitely using this as a little highway. So hopefully as we keep getting in closer to this, it'll just keep getting better. So we're pretty much in the heart of this finger. Right here is where the terrain starts to drop. On this side, it's super thick in here. And then right there is where the terrain drops on that side. So right here I have a 20-25 yard shot to each side of this little finger. I'm not seeing much for deer side. Now when this keeps going, it'll hit a little bit of a drainage, and that's where that saddle is. So I'm going to follow this finger out, and hopefully right where that drainage is, where they would cross that way, and this way intersect, there's going to be more sign or a more distinct trail. Because right now I don't have anything besides them meandering through. So for hunting wise, yeah, I could set up right here easy. But to set up a trail camera, not really seeing much in this spot. So I'm going to keep working that way. Camera's hung. I ended up settling on the edge of this log where the trail wraps around. And then there's a main trail that comes through the middle of the saddle right here. Now I went out that way to see if there's any kind of scrapes or anything along that edge, and there wasn't. There was some dropping, some tracks, but a lot of those trails ended up turning and coming down this way. So this is probably the best spot I can get here. On the other side, it's more of a slant. It's more falling down trees and stuff, so I think they're going to avoid it and they're going to stay up higher. I have it angled to hit mainly in this area, catch that trail, but it's angled enough that I should be able to catch anything coming through that backside too. So now I'm going to work in deeper and hit closer to the ridge system and see if I can't find some good scrapes in there. Just found a little bedding area very close to where I just hung that camera. Did not expect them to be bedding right here. But that's a pretty good sized bed. And there's another one I see over here. Yeah, again, another really big bed. And there's some droppings in it. And that's some pretty good sized droppings there. And those are from the spring. So it's bedding here relatively soon, or relatively recently, or now. You can see the impressions where it exits going that way. Now the camera is only right around here. Where is it? I can't see that big tree. But either way, it's literally right there, probably 60-80 yards from where I just hung that camera. And I was following the trail from the camera up, and it led me right to these beds. So that's a really good sign. Even if it's just doe bedding, that'll mean that the bucks will be here for the does, and I have the natural terrains compounding together right there, and that little trifecta going on. So very confident in that camera now that I just saw this. So I'm going to keep working in this direction. I'm going up the other end of the side of the saddle here, and then it'll level out again, and then I'll head straight back to that ridge. I made it back almost where I want to go. This is pretty much just a big flat that works this way and wraps around the ridge system. There's a little drainage somewhere in here on the maps, but you can't really see it, that comes down into this bottom. And there's just a bunch of fingers and bottoms throughout this whole thing. But what I have been seeing is a ton of deer droppings and some big piles too. So there are a lot of deer back in this section, which is promising. I just need to find a focused spot for rut. I know there's does all over this place, but I am seeing what looks like some bigger buck sign. I just need to start finding where they are, checking the does when rut comes around. It's very thick too. The stem count back in here is very high, which is great. So it's not overwhelming, but it's thick enough that a deer is going to move through here at any point. I just got to find where that focus point is. I don't know if it's going to be bedding, if it's going to be a terrain, if it's a fallen down tree, something that I see a trail or a scrape. I just haven't seen that yet. It's just broad travel through this whole thing, just meandering. So I made it back to where this flat meets the ridge, which starts there and goes pretty steep. And I'm not seeing big rubs, but I'm still seeing big droppings everywhere. And I'm seeing big tracks. So that's a 4-finger track there, coming off and going down the flat. Now I think I'm going to work this way, because the head of the drainage is somewhere over in that way, and it does pinch in slightly more, that I might be able to find something I'm looking for, or at least narrow it down a little bit. So even my camera's a 50-50 chance, where this over here is just so wide open and broad, there's nothing funneling them. So it's going to be a pot shot whether or not anything goes past the camera even hunting, I might see them come down, but I'm probably going to be out of range regardless. The ridge system is right here. Runs this way, and then it wraps over another finger. Where that finger goes out to the bottom is where I had my camera, where I got that big guy. There's a bunch of doe bedding down there, and he was heading this direction. So I'm very confident that he's probably in this section, especially with all the sign I'm seeing for the big footprints, the big poop. I think he's staying up on this ridge system here. It's very thick. Not a lot of people get back here. It's pretty far in. Any easier access is on the other side of the ridge system, so nobody's going up the ridge, across the top, and then dropping down. Now where this flat is, where that big track is heading, goes out that direction and pinches down into that finger, which is probably 3/4 of a mile. Maybe a little less, but probably closer to that. So it's a haul from here to there. But where that finger connects is where I used to get the big 8 on camera. Or I didn't get him on camera, but my buddy Tom did. So I assume that he's in correlation with that section over there, and then he's coming into this area here. So that camera should catch a lot of cruising. I just don't know if it's going to be a kill spot unless there's a buck on that doe that's using that doe bedding, assuming it's doe bedding. So I'm going to work this way, since I know that buck was coming from that direction, and see if I can find a point where this steep side and the drainage might have some kind of crossing or pinch, because that big buck most likely came through from this ridge here down that way towards that finger somewhere. Whether he stayed high and ran terrain naturally, or if he had his own way zigging through, or if he had a destination, I don't know. I was starting to pinch down a little bit. Super thick on that side, so he's not going to be going through that. You can see where the ridge kind of starts coming down here for that drainage. And there's just fallen down trees all over through here. And it starts getting a little swampy and wet down there, so I'm assuming it's getting even thicker with the drainage. But it's probably going to keep him up high, and it looks like this trail here is doing that. Now, where that ridge starts to come down up here and drop down, I'm hoping in there's going to be a scrape or something. It's where it should be if there is one. Just jumped a really big doe down here, right at the drainage here at the head. It's very open and grassy. It did pinch in there, but there was no scrape or anything. But this ridge point here that comes down has got a lot of poop on it. There's a lot of deer going up and down this section. I'm going to go down where that doe was and see if I can't find any scrapes. There's got to be one in here somewhere. I kept working that drainage, and I came down over there, hit the swampy bottom stuff here, and now I'm just ripping it this way, working towards where that finger is that I set the camera. This would be below it if I keep going. And I found my first good rub. It looks like historically it's been hit, and then it was hit last year. There's some pretty good gouging up here about chest, shoulder height for tines. This is more about waist high. But I can see nicks all over the branches. So this looks like a good rub. Now where this correlates, where I got him on camera, is that direction. So if he kept working the direction he was and he got to the drainage, he had a choice to either go up the ridge or jump the drainage and then come around the edge of the swamp here, which, if this is him, seems like that's what he did. And then this would just lead all along below where that finger is that I had. And then from that point, he would go towards the Giant 8s area, which is another core area with a lot of does and stuff. So I'm going to follow this along. It looks like it pinches in on the maps up here, where the swamp kind of cuts in a little closer to the ridge. And if that's the case, I should keep finding sign like that, and then maybe a scrape. But if it correlates with that finger down below it, that would be great. And it looks like another old rub here, where he's working through. So yeah, I'm going to keep working this bottom through. See if I can't find anything better. But if that was his route to take, and he was going where I was thinking he was going, he's either going to go through that finger on the top, or he's going to skirt this bottom. And if I can find a spot very close to that finger to put a camera on the bottom too, if he comes through here again, I should be able to get a time, direction, time of year, all that kind of stuff. Because if he's cruising, typically up here, they still cruise the same spots within the same like 3-day window they did the year prior. So that's a positive sign. I like seeing the big rubs. I just jumped a pretty solid buck sitting right in here. And I'm still working that terrain line out just below the upper terrain. And he ran that direction. But there's an old logging road in here I've been walking on. And there's no sign on it or anything. A couple tracks, but nothing that's to get you excited about looking at it. But I did have a buck just off of it, right there. Now it sounded like he did stop up here, so I'm hoping maybe I can get some footage of him. He just looked like a 100-inch, maybe 120-inch 8-point, I would guess. Like out to the ears kind of deer. But he was alone. I was hoping to see other ones take off with him in a bachelor group or something. It's about 10 o'clock. We've been out here for a few hours now. I'm past the section where I hung that trail camera. I didn't see much on that bottom. Nothing that would have been worth my time. I'm sure they do go in there. But in order to get a shot at something in there and be there the day he's there, it's just such low odds, it's not even worth it. So far this whole section, I think that camera spot's the only place I would ever put any time into. Just being a pinch like that, there's doe bedding right there, and there's a lot of big sign all around it. So they're eventually going to come through it at some point. Right now I'm going to put on about 1 mile to 2 miles and get into a different destination area. I've never been into this little section. I've scouted everything around it. But this is kind of like a little tucked in overlook spot that I overlooked at the beginning. And I'm thinking it might be where some of these deer pull up in. It's got some terrain. It looks like it's an old cut. So I don't know what to expect when we get in there, but that's where we're going now. And if we do find some good sign in there or something, I'll put a camera in regardless, just because it's not too hard to get into. And it'll be really good intel to know whether never to go there again or, oh crap, this is an overlook spot that we should be paying more attention to. Now the spot that I'm going to is also what Cody and I like to call jumper spots. It's places on either access roads, main highways, things like that, where these bucks are consistently using to jump between destination areas across these paths. So they're right next to access a lot of times. Obviously the bucks, say up here generally, you go about 1 mile or more in to get to these destination areas, which are either swamps, ridge systems, a clear cut, something like that, where the deer spend most of their time. And then 1 mile the other direction on that access road or highway will be another destination area of the same sort. So in rut, when these bucks are going from one destination to the other, they have to cross that road at some point. And a lot of times, they like to cross in the same exact spots over and over again. And the reason we call them jumper spots is there's one that comes to mind that is on the middle of an access road that you drive past this jumper spot to get into where the parking area is. And I can't even count how many times we've had big buck almost run into our truck or car going into these access areas. So eventually we caught onto it thinking, we're going miles in and these bucks are literally right next to the road crossing, even though they're not staying there. But if you're there for that one time they run across during rut, you have a chance to shoot them and minimal effort getting in. So we started paying more attention to that. So this spot today I've never looked at, but it lines up perfectly with where I'm at today and the other destination area, that this is probably their jumper spot where they're going to cross the road to get to those other areas. So I'm hoping to go in there and find that, and that'll be the case. Now when I was coming into this spot, the reason I came in here is because I anticipated this being the jump area and I wanted to follow the trail back. And right next to my car, which I'll show you when I get there, is 2 scrapes and a rub within probably 30 yards. Just wanted to fill you in on that, because that's something that Cody and I pay attention to a lot up here in the big woods. And we never effectively hunted it yet. We just never tried. But I know Cody last year was starting to put a little time into it, and he was getting into a lot of those bigger bucks. We were getting on camera 1 mile deep, but he was catching them in those little windows when they would cross up the road. So we have a rub here, just scrape right there, a scrape right there. Where I was focusing on today is straight that direction. This little ridge comes down to a finger and it goes across, and the same terrain continues across the road. And if you follow that all the way out, it pinches down to where I put my camera. But right here's where I anticipated a jumper spot to be. There's a lot of sign right here where they jump, because this is where all the deer congregate. And right there's my car on the road. So if you just follow this across, that's my other destination area that I want to go to. I'm going to check it out. But if you sat right here during rut, as painful as it would seem to do, you probably would run into a buck. So I got into this old cut, and it is an old cut, but it's very grown up, thick and nasty. I'm seeing a lot of doe sign. I'm not seeing much for buck at all, no rubs, nothing like that. So I'm going to keep meandering through the center of it here, see if I can find any main trail to follow, something that might lead me to something. But so far my gut's telling me this is going to be a write-off. I did not find anything I liked back in there. Pretty much going to write that whole little section off. So I'm pretty much determined. I do believe that that big buck is living in that ridge system. It's just so vast and wide that I don't know if I could kill him back there. I'm almost going to have to catch him on rut, which where that camera is probably my highest odds. If he comes through there to check those does, I'll get a shot. So that'll be it for today. And next time out, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I might start hanging some cell cameras for the coming season.